the reason I was able to buy it all as Allegory, I didn't hear any fucking rules. I didn't hear anything she said. I don't know any of the backstory. I don't know why those bunnies are there. It's just fucking creepy.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by CinemaSins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson from CinemaSins, joined as always by the voice of CinemaSins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
Also known as Jerry Scott.
Hello.
For Music Video Sins, Barrett Scher.
Yo.
Also with us today, other CinemaSins writers known as Aaron Dicer and Jonathan Watkins.
Hi, Ho, Cinerinos.
Hello.
And today we're going to be doing a mini-pod.
Ussy pod. That's an Ussy pod.
Yeah, that's an Ussy pod. There's really no other way to go with it.
A peely pod?
Yeah, maybe.
A peely pod?
A pooly pod? Of us. We're doing a mini pod of us today. Everybody in this room, I believe, saw this movie. And I have a feeling this is going to be a wide-ranging, divergent opinion.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it really is. As after this movie was over, I was like, I can't wait to talk about this movie. And we're all out in the hallway, and I was like, I have to keep it in check. I can't talk about it. So let's go around. What did you think, Barrett?
So up until as recent as last night at like midnight, I did not like this movie.
Okay.
I didn't like it narratively. I liked a lot of it, but I didn't like it totally. Mm-hmm. And I woke up this morning after reading a lot about it and thinking a lot about it, dreaming a lot about it, and I think I love it now.
Okay. All right.
I've never had that happen to me about a movie because I'll get into why in a little bit, but like I just viewed it from a different lens after sleeping on it and thinking about it, and that's my kind of movie, man. Mm-hmm. I'm down with it.
Oh yeah, Jeremy.
I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it last night, and I love it this morning. Mm-hmm. Now, I am massively confused by elements of it, and I can't wait to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
It feels like I saw somebody on Twitter last night say something like, I've never wanted to hear a director's commentary more in my life, and that is how I feel, because I feel like Get Out proved that Jordan Peele doesn't do much without purpose. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot in this movie that I don't know what the fuck the purpose was, and I want to know. But just from a pure vibe and mood, it freaked me the fuck out. It had me on edge the whole time.
Yeah, I would say so. Jonathan?
It's always hard going into one of these movies with this kind of expectation. I mean, after Get Out, I think we were all just pumped. We were really excited when we found out this was the movie that was going to fall, when you guys were all coming, and we were going to get to screen this. But unfortunately, you don't want to hold that against a movie, but it's hard not going into this with all these expectations. I'm kind of like Barrett. I liked it more than him, I think, coming out of it. But the more I've thought about it, the more I like it. I liked it a lot. I can't wait to see it again. And I could definitely see my like turning to love, or it's possible it could go down a little bit. But I think regardless, I firmly liked it.
Aaron?
This is an interesting one for me because I'm going to have so many rapturous things to say about this movie. I think there is some incredible work being done here. Overall, though, there is a foundational element of this movie that almost ruins it for me. This is the phrase that kept sticking in my brain was, "This is just beautiful nonsense." It is a movie that is gorgeous and wonderful, and Jordan Peele is so talented. Metaphorically, this movie is so amazing. The metaphor in this movie is not only beautifully done and beautifully layered, and just keep thinking of different things in the movie that lead you to it. But it's also, the theme of that metaphor is also so near and dear to my heart, which is so meaningful to me. And again, as we talk about spoilers and get a little deeper, maybe I'll explain a little bit more of that it's a surprise to me that I can't walk away going, oh, I love this movie so much. but there's foundational elements of the actual storytelling and the actual plot structure and the world building that is just there are too many holes for me to go, okay, I'm on board with just... So like when it's Mother and it's all obviously metaphor, I can just let that go. It doesn't have to make sense in a literal sense. When it's something like this, I feel like Jordan wants to tell a literal story that takes place, in a version of our world. And because of that, I want it to work on both levels, and I just don't think it does work on both levels.
I'm going to say I loved this with reservations. A lot of the things that Aaron is talking about here is stuff that during the movie I was having some issues with. I was like, I was discussing, and I can't remember what movie it was a few weeks ago, where I was saying, like, it's great to have all these metaphors and these deeper meanings, but does that make it a great movie?
Right, yeah.
A lot of times we look at these things and say, oh, look at all these little Easter eggs he put in there, and look at all that, and we get really excited by that because it's like this, we're supposed to think this is a much deeper movie than it is. And on a surface level, if you just watch this movie, it's kind of like, this is good. It's well shot, and the acting is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And but yeah, exactly what you're saying. I'm going to have many questions about the world he's presented us, because it's got some issues, man.
Yeah, some big issues.
Yeah.
But don't you think on multiple viewings, though, some of those issues might change?
I can't make it work in my brain.
No, I don't think so. From what I've read from Jordan Peele himself, what he's saying, and from all the different explanations, critics that I respect and understand, there's a lot of saying you're going to have to hand wave at a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And, there's just not going to be an explanation that's going to be satisfying in a logical way.
Yeah.
And thinking about it all different ways where these puzzles fit, it's just, it's the stuff that's unsaid that bothers me rather than the stuff that is said.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I can get
that's
behind
what it
that.
is.
I think we generally should just go ahead and grade it now and go right into spoilers, because it's the only way you can talk about this movie.
The spoilers are central to the discussion, I think.
So Barrett?
Lupita Nyong'o, that's the correct way to pronounce it, right?
I think so.
Is fucking amazing in this
she
movie.
is.
Great.
Winston Duke is very good. He's playing almost like a Jordan Peele type character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The kids are fantastic. The doppelgangers with the same actors are fantastic. Elizabeth Moss is fantastic. Like, every part of these performances just murder me. And I'll get to why I think this, but it's a solid A for me.
Okay.
It was a solid C last night.
Yeah, it's an A for me, pending at least 3 more viewings, and I reserve the right to go up or down a half.
Which he'll do by like Wednesday, so you'll be good.
Jonathan?
B plus A minus is where I'm at right now.
Okay.
I'm hovering between a B and a B minus.
Okay. Harsh. I'm at a B plus for this, straight up. Mainly just because, yes, I'm going to need to watch it a few more times, and this movie does demand that. It's not one of those where, after you watch it once and hate it, you should just leave it off to the side forever. You have to give this a couple of viewings, I think. But yeah, B plus is my grade. And now,
before we go into spoilers, I can't wait to see this another time and have my allegiances change.
Oh yeah,
to different characters. That's going to be my favorite part of watching this, and seeing the curtain pulled back on everything and looking at it from different eyes. And I think that's the mark of a great film, where you can watch it. It's almost Sixth Sensian, right? Where you can, even knowing the spoilers, you want to go back and rehash all that stuff, right? Especially knowing the spoilers, you want to go back and rehash.
And I'm sad I didn't look up her name before we did this, but the girl who played the daughter, I cannot wait to see what she does next.
Oh my God, the evil version of her?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm
fucking
saying.
nightmares.
That's what I'm saying. She did both versions so well. I mean, she's
which
great.
One? There's 2
older
daughters.
Lupita.
One is the younger Lupita, and one is her daughter.
The present day
One
daughter.
present day.
Present day. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going into spoilers now.
Let's do it.
No spoilers! Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze.
Luke's father is actually Darth Vader. She's the sister and the daughter. They just
No. I'm reading the books.
No. I'm not reading the books.
Yeah, that's appropriate.
So we did Get Out the same way. We made a mention of that.
That's true. What was funny is that there was a Key and Peele marathon on Comedy Central last night, and I watched probably like an hour or two in the background as I'm reading about this.
So one thing about this movie, and I know not everybody was the same here. I was talking to my brother and my niece and nephew after this. But I knew the twist way early.
Me too.
I was there.
Are you talking about the final twist?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I feel like it's the most unnecessary twist ever.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I know Barrett's wincing because
You loved it?
I fucking love it.
I love
it,
it though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's one of those. But Jeremy's right. It's almost unnecessary
It
because
could just be part of the story.
Because isn't that part of the mystique of it? Maybe that you could come up with that theory on your own if they didn't explicitly say it. I can't remember where it was. First off, anytime there's doppelgangers and doubles, you have to immediately think that they've switched places at some point. That's something we've gone through with cartoons all our lives and everything. And it's like, shoot the real one. Who's the real one? I don't know. Would the real one say this? Blah, blah, blah. So you know all that going in. But it was especially when she tells the story to her husband. And she says there was this little girl there, and I was like, "You could be talking about the other girl in this scenario." And that was immediately where I said, "All right, that's where we're headed."
It clicked for me with, I think it was in the first. It was when we went to the other family, and I realized that everybody was just speaking in grunts except her.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, she knows English because she was taught English growing up, and nobody else does." Which is weird because you would think if she can teach them to, form hands across America and stab people, she might be able to teach them a few English words.
Yeah, she might just not have wanted to.
This
It
movie
might not
takes
have
a
been
dark
necessary.
approach to Hands Across America. I gotta say.
But metaphorically, that's genius.
No,
Like,
I agree.
metaphorically, that
But
whole
the-
thing is smart.
Well,
but
and I love-
story-wise...
I love the subtle reference to that at the beginning too. I loved his attention to detail, and also like while that's being shown, there's a video of Chud, like right there off to the side,
and the man with two brains,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah,
right
the
stuff,
right stuff was there.
and what was the other
Well,
one?
there's Nightmare on Elm Street, but
that was an interesting inclusion. The right stuff, by the way. I read something that said something to the effect of like, well, 1986 was the year of the Challenger, and we were still healing as a country, and blah 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 blah. And I was like, the right stuff's kind of a stretch for a Challenger reference. If you were to really do, I mean, I don't think you could because the movie Space Camp came out the same year.
That's right. I love Space Camp.
It would have been hard because you couldn't have had a video cassette of Space Camp in 1986.
Right.
But
what the right stuff made me think of though was those annoying ass double VHS tapes that
Braveheart
ruined
thing.
your like shelf placement.
yeah.
Like it just completely messed up your whole like movie collecting.
And then just the fact that you had to watch a movie for about an hour and a half
And then
change the tape. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Thanks,
struggles
Titanic.
were real. In 1986, the struggles were real, people.
Yeah. Yes,
Hey,
it was.
can I, while we're talking about the ending, appropriately enough at the beginning of spoilers, can I say why I love it so much? Why do you love them so much?
Did the movie fight up on a wall?
I think that ending encapsulated everything about this movie. It, to me, and the reason, we can go into this now, the reason that I switched my opinion on it is that I viewed it as pure allegory now. The literal part is the fun part, is the popcorn part and everything. But if you view this in a mother type of sense, allegorically, I think it works beautifully. And that ending encapsulated the whole theme of oppression, of opportunity, because she has that horrific realization that I am the doppelganger, and then she has that smile saying, it doesn't really matter. I made my life how I made my life. It doesn't matter if I were this one or this one. I made the most of my opportunity. That's what this movie hits me the hardest on, and I think it's beautiful, and I think it's perfect like that.
No, the allegory thing is I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
the
you're
allegory
good.
thing is right on. I mean, because this is essentially a updated remake, whatever, of a Twilight Zone episode called Mirror Image. Jordan Peele has come out and said that he was very much influenced by that, and I thought about it the whole time I was watching this movie. And Twilight Zone was very much, a lot of the times, an allegory. So I think that's perfect. Which, thank God that'll be interesting to see him do the Twilight Zone now.
If I go from your perspective, Barrett, and say allegorically, I'm gonna forget the literal part of this story and go allegorically. This is an A+ for me. Like if I put myself in your position, I totally understand what you're saying. The themes that I saw throughout this entire thing have to do with our country. I don't think it's any mistake that one of the characters says we are Americans.
Nope.
It's no mistake that us is also U.S.
Yeah.
I think this very much has to do with a feeling that has been just creeping inside of me of I can't do anything about our us versus them mentality and the idea that you have to draw sides on everything and you have to hate the people who are on the other side as you are. And that is something he is saying here is, guess what? When you divide and you say, look at those people, you're saying, look at me. And the fact that the kid says, hey, when you point your finger, you've got 3 of them pointing back at you. That's the whole theme of this movie, is the idea that we are us. All of us, and these separations that we make are unhealthy and they're harmful, and the more we can do to empathize with each other, the better off we're going to be as human beings. That is,
shit's getting heavy up in here.
No,
that was the thing that went through my head when the boy says it's us, and I know it's the roll credits moment of the movie,
right, yeah.
But it's also the moment in the movie where you're like. That's where he's saying way more than just it's us, our doubles.
Right.
He's saying all these problems and everything that we're pointing at, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I don't think I have to say anything more after Aaron just dissected the movie. But
thanks for being so eloquent, you asshole.
All right, so was the mini pod.
What can I say? I completely agree with your assessment, and that's exactly what I was thinking on that moment.
And it's brilliant, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it's part of the reason that, and maybe I should just go your route, Barrett, and just say, okay, let's just treat it as allegory, not worry about the literal stuff. But like I said earlier, I think this is a movie that wants to hold together literally. I don't know that Jordan was especially concerned with it. Like, I don't think it was his main motivator. Yeah. But at the same time, it wants to give. Get Out does. Get Out holds together literally and metaphorically.
For sure.
I'm telling you, man, I had this exact opinion last night. But you can't have a literal sense of how this is all going down. There's no practical way that they could set up these experiments for every shadow being in the universe.
Right.
There's obviously no way that they would abandon all those motherfuckers down there, right? So,
what happens when people move across the country? Like, what happens when people drive to the next town?
Did you not read the thing at the beginning that said there were all those tunnels, millions of miles?
While people are driving 70 miles an hour, is there doppelganger
yes,
running?
look how fast.
Look how fast the kids are running.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I will say, though, one thing I did not get, I didn't really completely understand how it worked, because there was that great scene, and I love the scene where the car is on fire, and the kid decides to get out of the car because he's like, it's a trap, it's a setup. And then he starts moving backwards, and so his doppelganger starts moving backwards. But up until that point, that hadn't happened.
Yeah, it hadn't.
So I was confused. It had?
They did that mirror image thing in the closet.
But he's
saying,
that's
true.
There are a lot of moments, though, where he's not... He's not copying
and when she's running away, the doppelganger's not running the opposite. I don't know. That was just one of those moments I thought was really cool, but I didn't really understand how that worked.
Yes,
the rules of the universe are very late.
And then I was like, oh, that's why she had her handcuff herself.
Well, I gotta admit, I don't know what the rules are.
Yeah.
I'm literally 50% deaf, and out of pride, I did not wear those caption glasses last night because I didn't want to look like headgear guy. But every time Doppelganger Lapita spoke, nothing. I got nothing. And I gotta believe even fully hearing people struggled at times, because when you speak by breathing in, it's not like this, and So I have a lot of questions about what she said, because to me, the reason I was able to buy it all as Allegory, I didn't hear any fucking rules. I didn't hear anything she said. I don't know any of the backstory. I don't know why those bunnies were there.
That was
it's just fucking creepy.
It was very creepy. That was the part where she was just explaining how she had the opposite children, right? And
yeah. Hey, let's do this, because I'm noticing that we want, some of the audience wants interaction.
Yes.
Let's have our conversation, and let's take some questions at the end of conversation.
Oh yeah, we're
going to
have a big Q&A.
Michael Jackson permeates this movie.
In a weird way.
With the Thriller shirt, obviously, and then once Real Adelaide goes down and becomes the tethered, her followers all start wearing these red jumpsuits. They all have one glove on their hand and all that. And it's kind of an interesting thing. It's almost like these people are still, like, she was developmentally 9 all the way up until this point. She's still talking about Hands Across America, all these type of things. I can't also help but think, I don't know if this is true, because Man in the Mirror came after 1986, but that's a song Michael Jackson made that very much fits this movie's motif.
Yeah. There's a ton of mirror shots. Even when she's getting her head crushed on the table, there's the reflection off of the table of her face. So there's this like almost triplicate of Adelaide. Oh my God!
Well, and the whole movie feels like Thriller in a lot of ways. The idea of him leading that dance, and it's all
There's
there.
even moments where Lupita Nyong'o looks like Michael Jackson does, like has the facial expressions he uses in Thriller. Like there's a couple of moments I was like, that's exactly what he looked like when you see him as a zombie.
I did not think of any of this. This is very fascinating.
I'll tell you what, man.
Please tell me more.
She also had a strong Lauryn Hill vibe going on with that hair.
Yeah.
And I dig it.
I was just sitting there, just beyond trying to understand that movie. I was like, she's so pretty.
I was actually watching it thinking Chris is now falling in love with
I was just like, oh man, why is she so pretty?
And she is so cool. Like if you just see her like at this is getting off the subject, but if you see her like at a premiere or something, she's just always like just her fascinating, the way she dresses and just everything about her.
She's a superstar, man.
Yeah, she's awesome, that's good for her.
Okay, one thing that bothers me greatly, and I could be wrong, I'm reasonably sure when she turns around in the car to teach her son how to feel the rhythm, she snaps on the 1 and 3 beats.
I was trying to figure out how they were on rhythm at all.
That has to have been on purpose. Right?
You would think so.
I guess.
So what does that mean?
I don't know.
Because it drove me crazy. Because it was like that in the trailer. And I thought, maybe it's just a trailer. And then the movie comes and she's like, feel the rhythm.
Isn't that just her still learning because she's...
Maybe that's the point. She's the tethered who doesn't understand rhythm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and maybe the tethered, the 1 and the 3 are the
because
correct.
She's so young.
Because she got swapped when she was so young.
Yeah.
You learn that when you're...
Well, but it's also the opposite of, it's the upside down, so to speak. So maybe it's the opposite. No, I think that's it. I think that's right.
That makes that maybe it's.
I think that's right.
I thought, but it bugged me all.
By the way, the use of music in this movie is outstanding.
Oh, it's great.
Even like the "fuck the police," which could have very well just been like a one-off joke.
Yeah.
And then it actually they play like almost
the whole
entire
song.
And it
They even play the Ren verse
perfectly. Yeah, they played the Ren.
Nobody uses the Ren
You
verse.
never hear the Ren verse.
And it's weird. All this murder is happening, and you're sitting there going.
Like, I know. Like, who here didn't know that there was a guy named MC Ren in NWA?
Yeah.
Nobody
Well, and I'm
talks
probably
about it.
always going to be
He's barely
haunted
in Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
from now on by that ba-doom doom.
Yeah.
Like every time I hear
Oh
that.
yeah.
Ba-doom doom. Like
Yeah.
it's in the movie. It's not just in the trailer.
I do have a question. Maybe I'm being stupid about this, but once Real Adelaide goes down into the further.
No, it's the sunken place.
It's the sunken place? Okay. Once she goes down into that, I guess if something happens to your tethered, it happens to you too? Is that what they're saying? Is that because once the doppelganger goes up and gives birth and all that, she gives birth too. Mm-hmm. And I thought that they were essentially untethered once that switch had happened. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think when she had her uprising, Well, there's two things that I thought about that. First off is that after the experiment was abandoned and they didn't have anybody to monitor it or keep it going, essentially they unlearned that process, and that had happened after she had given birth and stuff like that. The other thing is after she did her uprising, they officially became untethered, because otherwise how could they murder themselves and all that stuff.
Right.
So I think that was the clean breaking point. But then if that's the case, then why is little homeboy mirroring the images and stuff like that?
Yeah.
He may have been playing a game or something like that. So
maybe, yeah.
But I think there was definitely, if not a clean break when she decided this night. Now, how did she get an entire country of, what is it, 600 million or something like that?
I think you cannot think about this movie in a literal sense.
You can't.
It doesn't make sense.
Barrett, she had 31 years to get everybody in the world, in America, to do this.
Like, hey, Ron.
31 years. All she had to do was walk down those corridors.
Well, let's talk about the simple fact that this movie does try to give a reason, right? It does say, it kind of yada yadas it, but there is that moment where it says this was an experiment that we did to see if we could do doppelgangers, and then we abandon it. And so we're to believe that experiment doppelgangered everybody in the United States of America, and then for 30-plus years, nobody happened to go down to any of the tunnels and see one of them.
Yeah.
Of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah.
People didn't know chuds existed.
Yeah.
I just
until 1982 or whatever.
I just want to know
84?
what happens at the end, because they drive off in the ambulance and there's all those people holding hands across America. What happens to them?
Yeah.
Are they?
I don't know. And then there's helicopters all hovering around them and everything.
Are we about to start shooting everybody, or?
I think I know. So they accomplished. You got to remind me. Was the Hands Across America actually? Did that get accomplished?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
actually, Hands Across America is pretty much considered a joke at this point. They obviously there were large gaps because you cannot do. There are mountains that you can't actually get hands through, so there were gaps. But they raised $30 million of the $100 million they wanted to, and only 15 went to help people out.
It was all bureaucracy and shit like that, right?
Son of a bitch! Let's make a movie about that shit.
So, okay.
Well, I think that's what Jordan Peele is doing here. He's kind of taking all that and laying it on top of this metaphor about how we fake seeing each other and we don't really empathize with each other. We do hollow things for each other instead of doing real things for each other. I think that's part of the metaphor.
No, and I think it's showing them going over the mountains and all that stuff linked up.
Well,
I think
the tether,
the literal explanation is that the doppelgangers accomplished what the normal humans couldn't accomplish. Like, they actually did
So
this
I'm
whole
supposed
thing.
to believe as that ambulance drives away that is a line of hand-holding, red-wearing doppelgangers that goes all the way to New York.
Correct. And that is the new ruling order. All right? So these people who have been marginalized, who have been oppressed, who have been literally confined to tunnels are now in charge.
Yeah. And let's not forget, every one of those people
I do too.
represents a real person who has been killed in real life, too. So it's like they're
the
all
country's
like
gonna
on the...
stank.
What about the,
Yeah.
Nick, the sequel's going to have triple gangers? There's another layer underneath.
Well, you
triple gangbanger?
You mentioned the country's going to stink. That was another thing I thought about with the experiment. Over 30 years, how many people died and their doppelgangers died? Where did they bury them? Did they have
like a video
funerals, or
game where
where
they
are all the
disappeared.
dead people?
Did they go straight from rabbits to humans? Because there's only rabbits and humans, right?
I think
what
they
do you
did.
mean? Oh,
Well,
as far
when you
as
go down
cloning?
there, there's the doppelgangers, and there's a million rabbits. I'm trying to figure out.
Well, the rabbits were part of the science experiment probably to begin with, and then they became a food source.
That's creepy.
Well, so,
I didn't think about
one of
that.
the things that she says that you couldn't hear is that she would, while you were eating awesome food up here, I was down there eating rabbits. And
But
stuff.
still, like from a scientific standpoint, they did rabbit trials, straight to humans.
Yes.
That's what. Yes, apparently.
Okay,
yes.
I still think there's a couple steps in
a-
between there. That you might-
Not in horror movies, man. They go straight to the humans.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, can I ask a real quick question? Does anybody know how the dad's doppelganger died? That confused the hell out of me.
He got chewed up in the
But it
motorboat.
wasn't running.
Well, no, he pounded his head on the motorboat to start it running again, and it worked that time. And
It
so
was super quick, though. I was confused, too.
It was hard to.
Okay, if that's what we think happened, okay.
Yeah.
By the way, his character is the most ineffectual husband ever, right? Like this, and it's awesome because it gives Adelaide all of the hero shots, right? Because dude is almost incapacitated from the beginning. Like all this false bravado, he goes out, he's like, "It's about to get real, y'all." That shit. Like he's immediately emasculated.
Yeah, well, and as Red points out, that she marries someone she wasn't even in love with.
Yeah.
And it makes you understand how in the world somebody looks like Lupita Nyong'o would be with. Now this guy in real life is a very handsome dude.
Oh yeah.
He's in Black Panther. He's like, man. But they made him all nerdy and goofy and stuff, and you're just like,
They made him look like Jordan Peele and act like Jordan Peele.
Yeah, Jordan Peele's going to do like the Woody Allen thing and have like somebody playing him in every movie. Like John Cusack's going to play Jordan Peele.
So let's talk about the horror element of this, about the suspense, thriller. Were you scared?
Okay, so my one biggest opinion coming out of that is that I really didn't feel like that was a horror movie.
Really?
Like that felt like a thriller to me.
Yeah. I disagree 100%.
And maybe I just don't have the right definitions because there is some blood and there is some violence, but I was much more creeped out than I was scared. If that makes any sense.
I was not. Well, part of the reason I was not scared through a lot of this has to do with because I didn't buy into the literal sense of what was going on. I wasn't connecting to their fear. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like connecting to them as well as he used the horror tropes. Like Jordan Peele really gets the idea of shooting somebody with a window behind them. So that any moment you wonder if there's. He gets that stuff, how to use the camera. But I never really felt it because I wasn't connecting with the literal sense, the authentic sense of the world. What I did connect with was the more thriller suspense kind of part of what's going to happen. But I was never really scared.
Yeah, Jesus, I was scared shitless, man.
But I mean, there are horror movies that don't scare you too.
Sure,
I mean, being scared. I mean, and I'm not. Even though I did make that tweet the other day about people calling this elevated horror, I thought that was funny. But I'm not. I don't care. I mean, if you don't think it's a horror movie, you don't think it's a horror movie. It doesn't do anything to me either way. But I definitely think that was a horror movie, like 100%.
Yeah, I would say some of the horror elements would include the Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker, all their doppelgangers coming in and swiftly making quick work of all those guys.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, and then of course it's a trope we've seen 1,000 times, and the last time I really saw it was in Scream. But the little girl like diving under the car. We don't know where she is. She's not under the car. And where is she? And those type of elements. There's a lot of horror elements in this. But, it's one of those things where all of those elements of horror and thriller just kind of blend together.
Well, do we even have genres anymore? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think Tarantino and people, and Kevin Smith even, and people like that have... They've taken inspiration from so many different genres. I mean, we definitely don't have like what we had like say in the 30s through like the 60s where it was very much defined. Mm-hmm. I think now everything is just kind of a mix.
Well, and this is just a big budget studio version of what we've been talking about with the Modern Horrors gang.
Yeah.
Is that horror movies now are a way to facilitate another message that now it's I mean, you'll still get your stupid horror movies, but
Truth or Dare.
Yeah, Truth or Dare, those type of movies. But now a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I can make a pretty good message with these because it's a really good genre to do it in. So.
Yeah, and horror movies have always kind of done that, especially since like the 70s, where you had a lot of the reactions to Vietnam. You could see in a lot of horror movies around that time, and then that turned into reactions to the Reagan era. In the 80s and so on and so forth. So with our current political climate, these types of movies make 100% make sense.
Yeah. Since we're talking genre, let's talk about comedy because this movie was funny.
Yeah,
it was.
There were a lot of. I mean, Jeremy, you had a very big laugh at one point. I heard you all the way from the back row.
I apologize.
No, don't. That's the greatest.
What was
man.
the big? What was
well,
the big?
Was it the
Micro Machines?
Micro Machines?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
Well, and it's Micro Machine, the thing that I think it's just especially just for us is the fact that Jeremy pitched this idea of CinemaSins as the Micro Machines guy doing these type of things. And that's why those original videos are so fast. Yeah. And so like just to hear a little bit of a reference to, I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with us, but it's still fun.
Maybe it does.
Ooh, maybe it does.
Well, I tell you what did. The first thing on Apple's news app when I got home last night, I was looking up news and stuff like that, was a Slash Film article. Deep dive. I mean, it was like 6 pages long about a conversation between critics who had pre-screened it. And in the middle of this fucking article, out of nowhere, they say, well, Jordan Peele doesn't make movies for the CinemaSins crew. Like, what the fuck, man? What does this movie have to do with us? It's not bringing us into this. This has nothing to do with us.
Oh, this movie has a lot to do with us.
Oh. Yeah, obviously he's not making it for the CinemaSins crowd, right?
I mean, you can't spell CinemaSins without S.
There you go.
It worked well in your head.
Yeah, man. My head. That was the funniest fucking thing ever.
Okay, here's another thing I had problem with. The kids are great. Mm-hmm. They're absolutely wonderful.
You had a problem with the kids being great?
I have a problem. I have a problem with I don't think they're authentic. I don't think children react that way, especially at that age. In that, I don't think she goes in. Where did it come from for her to go in there with a golf club and murder people? You know what I mean? Like that's just.
It's a fight or flight instinct.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's stalking. She's not being backed into a corner and trying to survive.
I think I have an answer for that.
Okay, good.
Okay, because I think she does it out of instinct at the beginning because she just casually grabs that putter or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so she's looking for mom. She hears her being whatever. Kind of tortured, but not really. It's Elizabeth Moss doing her weird thing. Yeah. But she hears her going, so she's trying to get to it, but trying to be careful. She almost accidentally kills that first girl, and then it awakens this bloodlust, and she has way too much fun with that next one, and like jabbing it, like the Office Space guys with the printer,
Hey, and she's half doppelganger, remember?
And that
she's half doppelganger. Whoa! You just blew my mind.
Wait a minute.
Actually, the half doppelganger, I take it all back. She is half doppelganger.
And speaking of comedy, though, that does lead to the great bit where they're comparing kills, like who has the most kills.
But wait a minute. All right, ignorance coming. Get ready for ignorance. Did the doppelganger marry the Winston Duke doppelganger underneath and have kids that looked exactly like...
And I think that's why
because
those kids
they mirror what
out,
the people on the surface do.
And I think that's why those
even
kids
though
turned
Lupita
out
on the
worse.
surface was the doppelganger and not the real Lupita. The Lupita down under still...
Yes, and that's the speech you didn't hear where she's talking about all the things she had to go through while the doppelganger was above. She's talking about you had, a C-section or whatever, and I had to have it ripped out of me. She's talking about these things that she had to endure while you were enduring the exact same things.
I really should have worn those glasses.
Something that I think we'll have to delve into further in the repeat viewings is this half doppelganger thing, because that's the way it is. I mean,
that's amazing.
That's
to think about.
But the Lupita, the Adelaide doppelganger, that she's been educated, she's turned into something different, and so I mean, it kind of makes. And plus, she married a non-doppelganger, so it kind of makes sense that those kids would turn out fairly normal, whereas the kids below, they also came from a male doppelganger that was not educated. Was basically a chud.
I think that's your answer. You broke my brain when you said that, but I think that's your answer. Is that they are the same, and that one class is not savage and one class is not. It's the opportunities that they were afforded, and they were not afforded any opportunity. That's where you get into the allegorical stuff in my head. Is that it's almost a social three identical strangers type of thing where you put the same exact person, the same two halves of the same person, in different situations. One's going to thrive and one's going to do poorly, despite them being the exact same. So it's interesting that you said that, but I don't know if that's the case in the daughter's case, because I don't know if there's an inherent savagery to the doppelgangers or if it's just the mitigating circumstances.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's interesting to think about.
Like it does feel like the movie is more saying that she just got the bloodlust and she's ready to go. And I agree with Aaron though. I was like, these kids are taking this pretty well.
They are, yeah.
You know,
then they're all sitting around with all
the
dead
bodies.
Yeah. There wasn't, the authenticity was a little, and this is fine, by the way. It's elevated movie making. I get it. But yeah, there is a little bit, and that has to do with my buy-in as well to the fear elements. There's an element to the authenticity that is missing when they are sitting around with dead bodies all around them. And like, I just, I like to think of myself as a pretty even-keeled guy. I would just be like, I don't know. I'd just be comatose. Like, I don't know what I would do. Like, like if that really happened.
And I think all kids are different because one interesting thing I remember when It came out, and I heard you talking about It on your podcast and with them, you were talking about how you didn't find the kids in that movie believable. And I was the exact opposite because those were the kinds of conversations I was having with my friends as a kid. And that's just different childhoods and, being around different people. Now, I think this is a different story. But I'm just saying, I will say, I do think different kids react in different situations. It definitely didn't bother me in this. But I do know what you're saying. I can't imagine I would just be sitting around dead bodies, like, having a conversation.
Well, and let me clarify.
Having a normal conversation with somebody.
Let me clarify this. I think the kids in this are amazing actors, and I think they're doing exactly what they're told to do.
Yeah.
I just don't know that the direction the characters were given felt supremely authentic to me in the whole scheme of things.
That in that moment, I think that was explained away by Winston Duke's character saying, "We got everything that we need right here. We got a backup generator. We got food. We have all this stuff. Yes, in the current state, there's Elizabeth Moss like laying there in the middle of the thing." But he's like, why would we go anywhere? We've even got the TV, and then they finally turn on the TV. So I think it's explained away a little bit in the fact that we're set right now. There's no more zombies coming at us. There's no more death and destruction. We can chill here for a little while.
But weren't they even like eating? At one point, were they not eating? I just remember they were sitting at the table. I couldn't remember if they were
were sitting
eating.
at the kitchen table.
Oh, okay, that's what it was. Okay,
was that Tim Heidecker?
Yeah, Tim Heidecker.
He's like Tim and Eric, right?
Yeah.
Wow,
that's funny.
what a crazy turn for that guy.
Absolutely.
He plays a great asshole, by the way.
Yeah, he does. He's been in a lot of movies recently, but usually just for like 10 seconds or something like that. And you're like, oh, there's Tim Heidecker, and then he's gone. This one, they finally expanded him a little bit more, and that's a perfect casting. Perfect casting.
It is.
So good. Can I talk about another part of the metaphor I really loved? Is the fact that the doppelgangers, or the tethered, I think is what they're called in here. The tethered take on the base attitudes and actions of their upper doppelgangers. So, for instance, when he goes to shake hands and then does the hair slick thing or whatever, or her cutting herself in the face because she wants to be something she's not, or so the doppelganger of him is very, like you said, trying to be all gruff and manly, and so it's really interesting that it's also saying something about not just that we're all alike in a literal sense, but that there is a version of the things that make us tick deeply, that just kind of create who we are, that is in the people that we may be prone to hate, So it's kind of even a deeper level of it really is,
I had somebody in college, it may have been a professor you and I both loved, I had somebody tell me, it stuck with me forever, that your biggest pet peeves are very often things you yourself do. You just don't think it's wrong when you do it. And so the place that I notice this the most is I talk too much, and it bothers me when other people talk too much, but mostly the road. Like, I don't think I'm cutting somebody off when I gun my engine and get in front of them. But I could see a scenario where I'm the other car, and I'm like, you asshole, you just cut me off.
Not anymore now that you've seen Roma.
Centered at peace.
Allayed.
Yes.
But you get my point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Now, it's interesting, the base parts of I forget the Winston Duke's character name. Do you remember what it is?
It is Gabe.
Gabe. So, yeah, Gabe, his base, like Tim Heidecker's character at least has that smarm and that assholery and stuff like that. But Gabe's character, his doppelganger, is down to like just primitive, yawps, basically, right? Like he's just trying to like outmuscle his doppelganger and not really. There's no nuance to it, which is odd because it seems like the real Gabe is presented as like, you know, pretty well educated dude, like, you know, pretty well functioning, that kind of thing, doing well financially. It looks like, you know, enough to get a boat.
Well, isn't this even a boat
Speaking
house?
of this,
Yeah.
It's like a
He's got
vacation
dock.
house.
Yeah.
I want to say something, and this might just be a weird thing with me, but holy hell, if you can afford a summer home, buy a bigger fucking bed. That bed.
Oh, especially if you're sleeping with Winston Duke, who takes up the entire fucking thing.
I'm like have a king bed or just get the fuck out of my face. But that was like a twin bed.
I have never more identified with a man than when he took up that entire bed laying on it.
I love the name of that boat too, the B Yacht.
Yes. Oh my God, that's another layer to. God damn, I want to see this movie again. That's another layer because they're doing well, right? The Gabe and Adelaide characters, but the Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker characters are doing a little bit better, right? Like the boat is a little bit better. The car is a little bit better.
Yeah, all that
the
is
house is a little bit better, right?
Yep. And there's even that thrown away line where Adelaide says something like, I have trouble speaking sometimes, and she goes, I get that. And obviously doesn't get that on any level, much less the deeper level of that line, what that means. And it's, you know, they have things slightly better, but don't.
Man, this is why we need somebody like Jordan Peele to do something allegorical or horror-based or whatever it is, but then just put little things in there.
Well, now
that
you know
if
who you
think
need to
about
reach out to get an interview. Let's get an interview with Jordan Peele, man.
Oh, yeah.
But he doesn't make movies
Actually,
for us, so.
he's been on the Malton Show, so maybe we can make that happen.
See if we can swing that, man.
He does a lot of podcasts and stuff. He seems pretty accessible.
I was going to say, we talk about Easter eggs, too, because we really haven't touched on a lot of the little Easter egg
We
touches.
talked about the bunnies.
We talked about the. That's true. That's true. I don't remember them having eggs. But the number one, or 11, technically. You know, Channel 11 is the TV she's watching at the beginning. Jeremiah 11:11, 11:11 on the clock. Obviously, it's symbolic of the ones being next to each other.
Also, is a
mirrored.
score of a baseball game that is said out loud at one point.
Yeah, so there's just little touches like that I really love. You know, there's all the pop culture Easter eggs, the Jaws shirt, of course, the Hands Across America and the Michael Jackson, we talked about. There's just a lot of little fun stuff like that. Did you guys notice any others?
Well, I didn't notice this, but I read about it. That apparently this is the same beach where Lost Boys shot.
Oh, yes.
And somebody says there's a movie shooting over by the Ferris wheel.
And this was 1986.
And it's a direct reference to Lost Boys.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Totally.
there's a lot of references to like Goonies and Corey Feldman and stuff like that going on in this. The Jaws thing, there's a scene, a beach scene that is reminiscent of the first kill in Jaws. Has the same sort of editing and everything.
Yep.
So yeah, that's. I mean, it's one of those movies that's just cool to talk about,
It
right?
is.
Like I feel like you could hate this movie and love talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I agree with Barrett. That's actually a sign of a really good, at least a really good conversation movie, is to be able to have stuff like that.
It's a movie you're not going to forget, whether you like it or dislike
Right.
it. I am a little surprised at how high it is right now. I hadn't looked at the audience ratings yet, but I know Rotten Tomatoes is like 95%.
Well, just remember Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving this a fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I have qualms. So just remember Rotten Tomatoes could be a whole bunch of people who are like, this is good enough to get a fresh.
Let me ask you. I've always been curious about this.
Yeah.
I should have known this already. Should have asked you this yesterday. You submit to them?
Yes.
And then you choose fresh or rotten.
Correct.
And then you also choose the out of 10 score?
Well, they convert my grade to whatever their.
You give it a letter grade?
I give it a letter grade. I think letter grades for me are the most impactful for people to understand.
And
Okay.
they have an algorithm to convert that.
To
I've
their
always
scale.
wondered if the critics were getting to choose fresh or rotten, or if Rotten Tomatoes
There are
was just taking the math.
There are some that Rotten Tomatoes does. Some critics who are too highfalutin to do their own work, Rotten Tomatoes will say, "Hey, we want you on the site. We'll have people." Well, they actually offered to do that for all my old reviews. They said, "We'll go back through all your old reviews and convert them into the site." So they do some of the work
Pretty
too
cool.
sometimes.
Inside knowledge. Also, don't think I haven't seen the trolling Yoo-hoo over here by you three. All right. I didn't want you to think I missed that.
I told them that when I read that sin, I was like, I know a lot of people who drink Yoo-hoo, but I was like, I love this sin, so I'm keeping it in.
I think when I reviewed it, when I was doing my notes on it, I think I even wrote, great sin, by the way, I used to drink Yoo-hoo all the time or something.
To be honest, this is the first time I've ever really had a Yoo-hoo.
Yeah.
And you're having like a strawberry Yoo-hoo. Oh, goodness gracious.
Are we about to open it up for questions?
Just about. I would also say Jeremiah 11:11 is a pretty basic, apocalyptic verse in the Bible. It doesn't, it has themes that go along with what's going on, but I think it was probably just the closest 11:11 he could find in Scripture that went with what
There is a
doing.
cool moment, though, because that verse references like a voiceless scream or something like that.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Moss's character, one of the indelible images is her going,
Yeah, that's true.
Man,
yeah.
Amazing.
for 5 minutes of screen time, she is so good in this movie.
Man, there's
and the frisbee landing on the blue circle. Just kind of all those little moments that are like, oh, something is weird here. Something is lining up too well.
I think that's why it's easier for me than you to just ditch the literal shit.
Yeah.
Once that frisbee landed perfectly around that blue circle, to me this is an alternate universe. This is not reality.
Yeah.
Because...
But the movie wants to have rules and also not have them.
You're right. You're not wrong about that. But like you said earlier, you said it best in that he does want some literal stuff, but he's clearly more concerned.
Oh yeah, his priority is the metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, what's the difference between an allegory and a metaphor?
That's a great question. I don't know that I could give you a great answer to.
I didn't know if there was an easy
Metaphor's a
answer.
comparison, and allegory is much more about what?
Allegory, you generally have it's a metonym.
Yeah, let's ask the English teacher.
It means one thing directly represents another.
Okay.
Whereas metaphors are a little bit more free-flowing in their representation.
What he said.
Yes.
So I guess this would fall more into the allegorical.
No.
I would think it would be more metaphorical, but
Was that a yes or no? No. This is much more metaphorical.
Yeah, this is metaphor.
Okay. Good. I learned something today.
That was the whole point of this whole weekend, was to create an experience that all of us would remember. I think I'm enjoying myself more than you guys.
Was mission accomplished on that.
Mission accomplished, man.
Yeah, because watching a movie like that with knowing that everybody in that theater is basically your friends, that was just really, really an added level of excitement to that whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for this mini pod.
Yeah, Vinny.
So if you have opinions about this movie, and I know you do, go to
Just your
SinCast
opinion,
presented
man.
by CinemaSins on Facebook, CinemaSins Twitter, Reddit, SoundCloud, and we are on Discord as well. But I'll do it for this mini pod. Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, Barrett Scher, Aaron Dicer, and Jonathan Watkins. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit CinemaSins.com.
You talk about the experience of the crowd, and my wife was sitting next to me and was obviously much more into this and afraid than I was. There's a moment towards the end when somebody in our group sneezed. Like it's all wrapped up. We're flying over the hands across America. Somebody lets out a little sneeze, and my wife goes, "Ah!"
Yeah.
So like,
Trying to move that mic so that it's in the
Aesop's
screen.
fables, those are allegories.
I got you.
Whereas something like this is metaphor.
Okay.
I think one that I read that was big allegory thing was called the Pilgrim's Progress.
That's what that one. The characters are actually named like.
John Bunyan's 1600s.
Yeah.
That's
Now we got another you.
Yeah. Another Yoo-hoo comes up.
We're in a gang.
Did you bring enough for the whole group?
We're the Yoo-hoo boys.